Hey Dean, thanks for coming on to the show.
Cheers for having me on.
I suppose I should start by asking you how your shoulder is, mate. While we were ice skiing, I should say before we had hit any of the après bars, you took a bit of a tumble and hurt your shoulder, didn't you, when we were in France?
Yeah, it was actually slowing down to go to the bar. So
So you dislocated your shoulder on the way into a bar, or on the
yeah,
way to the
yeah, that's
bar.
exactly it. Yeah. So, but it's all right. It's all right. Yeah, I had X-rays. It's all good. But yeah, I had MRI yesterday actually. So I'll see what happens with that.
Well, I'm glad to see that you're kind of back and appear to be fighting fit, and yeah, hopefully ready to go back out skiing next year for proper ski.
Of course,
But
of course.
Dean, I'm excited to have you here today because this is the first time that we have had somebody like yourself on the show, and I've been sort of looking and waiting for the right person to come and talk to us about this because this is a difficult topic, and depending on who you ask, you kind of get a lot of different advice. And had the opportunity to get to know you and understand more about what you do in your business. I thought that opening up, your sort of all this knowledge that and skill that you've got in the world of project management would be a great opportunity for us at the podcast and our listeners. So I'm really pleased to have you on the show. Now, I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of our listeners already know who you are, but perhaps for those who don't, Dean, could you just tell us a little bit about yourselves, about your business and what you do in the property world?
Yes. So I run a project management consultancy called QS Force and a wider group of project management and quantity surveying businesses, which have offices in Winchester, Cardiff, London, covered all over the UK, from 100 grand projects, 50 grand projects, right up to 400 million pound projects. So I got into project management, working in central London on major projects. That's what I specialize in. And I counted this up the other day because we're currently acquiring a business, so I've had to put something out there to show my CV for the people that I'm buying, and it was £4 billion worth of projects delivered. So that's my CV at the moment. £4 billion worth of projects delivered. So they range from 60-story towers in central London to small projects elsewhere. So that's what I do.
Wow. So they are some pretty big numbers and obviously across, I'm sure, a number of projects as well. So, but I think what's pretty clear is that project management is your speciality and you've got a huge amount of experience in this field. So I'm really interested and really looking forward to kind of tapping into a lot of your knowledge today. I suppose where I'd like to start is by asking you a question that you might laugh at, but as a fairly lay person in the world of the field of construction and building, had the opportunity to meet a lot of people. I know a lot of other people in the industry, similar to myself, who don't have skills like yours. Why is it that part of what we do as property investors, why is it that this element of building and actually sort of delivering projects can so often be fraught with challenges, difficult relationships with builders, and just be in some cases a real disaster?
Hmm. Do you know? I think it's I got so many opinions on this that range from come from so many different sides. But the big issue in projects that are what we class as the minor projects, which is under 2.5 million, and that goes all the way down to like you said, your 30 grand refurbs, is the professionalism in that sort of small sector of minor projects. It's almost like an unkempt world where you can do whatever you want. Builders can do whatever they want. If I had a project on that was 10 million in value, they would need to spend the next 6 months telling me why they're good to even sit down at the table with me to do this project. Whereas if you've got a small project, it can be a disaster because you can just get John from the pub who's going to say, yeah, I know how to build a deck, and I know a plasterer and I know a plumber. And there's not really a great deal you can do about that, especially when you don't have a great deal of experience in setting projects up. Now, I don't have that issue because I don't allow people like that on my projects. But that's not to say that I haven't. I've done loads of projects, but I've had an absolute nightmare. But I just think it's professionalism.
Do you think that project management as I suppose a specialty or field or an area of property investment is something that a lot of us still overlook? I think as I've gone on to do bigger projects that have required a lot more in terms of cash, people on the jobs, thought, problem solving. And I've worked with other people who've been much better at project managing than I am, and I'm not good at it. I suppose I've really started to understand how significant that part of delivering a project is, no matter what size. But I think that project management is something that a lot of us think that we can just do ourselves. It's an area to save money. Do you think that that's fair to say? And do you think that, is that part of the reason why a lot of us are finding it difficult? Because actually we're not even giving it the time and attention that it requires.
Yeah, definitely. Hit the nail on the head there, mate. It's if you've got a builder that comes up to you and says, like the classic thing that they all say is, it's just a refurb. It's fine. It's just, mate, this is our bread and butter. It's only a small refurb, so 150 grand is fine. You then think, as somebody that's inexperienced, that, well, they do this every day. This is their bread and butter. It is only just a refurb, that kind of thing. Or it is only just a conversion. It's quite small, it's quite simple. And also, they've got an in-house project manager. It is a little bit, you get drawn into that unprofessional world. Whereas if you've got a project over that magic number, that 2.5 million, there's absolutely no way you'd get dragged into that. There's absolutely no way you'd allow a builder to manage their own project and not have somebody on your side. But yeah, I think that is the main issue, is that people think that they can save money on it because the builder can do it. But something that I like to tell people who are a little bit less experienced in project management is take the word project management away and call it an asset manager, or call it a contract manager, whatever you want to call it, contract administrator, anything, doesn't matter. But think to yourself, my builder has an asset manager. The assets for that builder are the project. It's their money. You're going to be paying them for the project. That's their asset. So they are protecting their asset. They are not protecting your asset at all. And if something was to go wrong, they're not going to come to you with their hands in their pocket. Oh shucks, I've made a boo-boo. Something happened. It's going to cost us 20 grand. It's going to cost you 20 grand because they're going to protect from their side of things. And yeah, I think that's the main issue, is that people think that they can maybe just mosey along and it'll all be fine. A lot of the time it is.
A friend of mine told me about a particular project recently, and this particular friend, he's an architect. This is actually a mutual friend of ours. And he designed the scheme for a really beautiful house. It was a new build, and the property owner got in a team of builders to do it. It was a 7-figure project. It's quite a big project, and they initially sort of commissioned a project manager, or certainly thought about it, got some quotes for it, and in the end decided, and I think this, if I remember rightly, under the advice of the builders, to let the builders, or the builder, the main contractor, project manage it. Yeah. As it transpired, this sort of was through COVID. The project sort of ran on for, I think, sort of nearly 3 years. I think the budget almost sort of trebled, something like awful like that. And of course, my friend said, well, this guy, this builder, clearly, wasn't the most genuine guy, but they'd given him the responsibility of project managing. And of course, it wasn't in his interest to manage anything efficiently, effectively, cost efficiently. It wasn't in their interest to do it quickly because they were managing their own project. And actually, I see this on a much smaller scale on projects of 30, 40, 50,000 pounds as well. It's the first time I've ever actually thought about it like that. I guess because the example was so significant. But do you think is this a problem? Is the idea of thinking that our builders can be project managers, is it just sort of, are we mad? Is it just a crazy idea, Dean?
Yeah, 100%. It's like,
yes.
Yeah, it is. I said to you before the call, right? And I say to builders all the time, and I'm not beating down on builders here. There are some absolute cowboys out there, right? There are some absolute cowboys out there that deserve nothing more than what they get if they were in trouble, and so, like, a good project manager was to say, right, we're going to action the contract against you. They deserve that because they entered into something that they shouldn't have done. But there are some really good builders out there, and that still doesn't make you a project manager. And I say to builders all the time, if you class yourself as a project manager because you've worked in construction for however long, and bearing in mind you've worked in construction as let's just say, for instance, a bricklayer, did your apprenticeship as a bricklayer, and then you were a site manager, and then you started a company, and there we go, I'm a project manager now. Send an email to every university in the world and tell them just cancel the course, because the course is not worth the paper it's written on, because I didn't do it and I'm a project manager. No, you're not. It's you're a senior site manager, which is amazing, and you will be able to run a project and you'll be able to run the site. But that's running the site is entirely different to running the project, and a lot will be able to, and again, I'm not beating down on vocational studies and stuff like that, because they are actually the preferential route for anybody in construction coming up. I would much rather somebody who's learned on the job, but has that knowledge of things that are not just site based, because it's not just all site based. There is a lot of things like drafting contracts, knowing the legal ramifications of not maintaining that contract, doing things outside of the contract. It's knowledge of building regulations and architectural regulations and all that sort of stuff, and financial stuff and commercial aspects and all that. It's very rare that you find a builder that knows how to do all that stuff. So sure, they can run a site as site managers, but if you have somebody who's not running the project, back of house project, and you're just running the day to day, you open yourself up for so many issues. And it's funny you say about this project that you know about now. I've literally just been instructed. So my company got instructed this morning on a project which is exactly the same as that. And I spoke to the builder this morning. Have you got a contract? No. So do you know how to draft a contract? No. Do you do JCT contracts? Don't know what they are. And you're saying, right, well, how can you propose to your client that you will project manage this? And he's like, well, emails are contracts, isn't they? Yeah, sure. You can bring them up in court, but a JCT contract is written by lawyers who focus on construction legalities. And that's the thing, is there's a lot of back of house to project management. It's not just running the day to day. It's not just counting bricks and cracking the whip and shouting and screaming. It's a lot of back of house stuff. And I don't think people neglect that. I think that people maybe don't know about it.
I think you're right. It's funny because I think the obvious deterrent to getting in project management seems to be cost and saving money. So let's park that idea. And then there's also, maybe it's, well, in reality, there is going to be a cost associated to it. But I guess what we're saying is, can you afford not to invest in that cost? Because the problems of the ramifications could be so significant that actually could end up costing you far more. And even on small projects, and I've made mistakes myself over the years and on small projects, and and some of them have been sort of £10,000-15,000 mistakes, and some of them a bit more than that, and some a bit smaller. But I guess there's also the hidden cost of how much time, as someone who's not skilled in this or experienced in it, how much time we're investing in this, when somebody perhaps like yourself could obviously do it much more efficiently, much more quickly. That time of mine, does come at a cost. I could be doing that or using that time somewhere else, maybe to have conversations with investors or find the next deal, or find another way of bringing cash in to help fund my deal. And I guess people, and I'm guilty of this, are quite short-sighted and just see it as a cost-saving exercise. But I think what we're really saying here is that there's so much more to project management that you sort of need to know to really understand that actually it's far more than a cost-saving exercise. Actually employing the right person, the legalities and the inherent risks. I guess we could be talking about people and site safety and the sort of stuff that we just don't, as someone who's done a lot of small projects under £100,000, lots of sort of refurb conversions, HMOs, things like that. You don't really pay much attention to the possibility of somebody falling off a ladder or something happening on site, and actually what would happen if we haven't been managing that site right, if we haven't got the right paperwork in place. So can you help us understand in a bit more detail, Dean, what sort of things, if we were to speak to somebody like you about project management, look for professional support, what sort of things could you actually help us with, even if it's a smaller project?
So I think that getting a project management consultant in is, like I said, this, drawing back to what I said earlier, I don't think that people neglect it. I think that they are unaware of what it actually is. So site management is what your builder's going to do. It's what they're going to run the site. My company will not run the site. We've got, when this acquisition goes through, 32 employees. Not one person runs a site, because we don't run a site management company. That is stepping on the builder's toes. So I think that people don't quite understand what project management really is and how it can really protect you. So, as an example, you see all these people on Instagram and all this stuff like, did a property course last week and now I'm offering project management services for your projects going ahead. And you're just like, oh, mate, give me a break. And the going rate for people who project manage things like that, project manage your refurbs, a property sourcer that will also do project management is like 10% of the refurb cost, right? We charge 2 to 3%. And we are RICS certified, qualified project management company with multiple offices throughout the UK. We charge 2 to 3%. It's because we're not doing site management. Yeah, we would charge a lot more if you wanted us on site every single day, but that's what a site manager is. So yeah, your builder can do your site management. Your builder can do all of that. But what everybody needs is somebody in the background calling the builder on a weekly basis, saying, send me the invoices. Let me draft the contract. I will draft the contract before you start the project. So just to run through what we offer, say we're doing a project, you come to me, you've got a 150 grand project. The likelihood is we'll set the project up. That'll cost around 1% of the build cost. And when I say set the contract up, that'll be from you telling us what you want, right the way through to finding a builder, getting the builder into contract, negotiating the tender, working with the architect or whoever it is to produce the spec, all that sort of stuff, and get the builder to the point that they're ready to put a shovel in the ground. And at that point, they're in contract. They are fully tied up in all of the legal entities that need to be put in place with the project to protect you as the investor. And that's cost you, if it was a 100 grand project, that's cost you about £1,000. Getting that protection that goes down to site every 2 days and just goes, how's it going, lads?
So help me understand then how you assess the projects and the sort of the detail within the contract. So you've sort of mentioned there about sort of controlling the invoices and signing off works then, Dean. So in that contract, there'll be a schedule that you have agreed sort of between the client and the builder. Am I right? And then there'll be points at which it's agreed that certain payments can be made when I suppose a certain threshold is reached, where they've done a certain amount of work, and then they can put an invoice in, and then you will approve that invoice by checking the works and sort of essentially releasing the money. Is that kind of how the fundamental of the contract works?
Yeah, like there'll be a lot of other things in the contract, but again, we don't write that. That's already written. It's already a JCT thing. JCT, for anybody listening or watching that doesn't know what that is, Joint Contract Tribunal. And that is basically a board of lawyers that work in construction that write contracts that are already templated. And they don't just protect you, they protect the builder too. So they're very good contracts for all-round protection. And yeah, that's pretty much what it is. It's drafting the contracts, it's getting the builders into contract and holding them accountable to that contract, making sure things are quality, making sure the payments are on time. And all the pre-contract work, such as getting the builder into contract, that's going to include all of the things that you just said, such as setting out payment plans,
Yep.
Creating a program and then saying, at this stage, we'll pay you this. At this stage, we'll pay you this. And your payments are contingent on you completing X, Y, and Z. But not just the physical work. It's also contingent on you saying, on a Friday, you've sent me your report. You've sent all the things that I need to be sure that when I call you, Andy, I can say, project's going quite well. If you don't send that, you could have done all the work in the world and you're not getting paid.
I'm smiling because as I'm sat here, I'm thinking about how many people listening into today's podcast are probably thinking, gosh, there's another way. I don't have to pay my bills on a Friday night so they can get off to the pub. And I have personally been here so many times, and actually this has been a bone of contention in my own businesses over the years. With some of my business partners, we've employed the sorts of builders and the teams that they turn around, they say they need some money, and they want paying on a Friday night, and and it's rush. And in my experience, absolutely not the way to do it.
No.
Now I'm much more accustomed to doing exactly as you have sort of been describing, because I work with someone who works just like you do, and in fact I know that you guys are sort of do some work together as well. So that's really interesting. And when it comes to the pricing of the jobs then, Dean, this is, I think, something that a lot of people struggle with. I think I've been doing it a long time, and I think I'm pretty good with the sort of up to £100,000 refurbs, but mainly because it's a lot of rinse and repeat for me. I'll use the same team, same materials, same sort of floor plans, same spec. So I think I'm pretty good with the costs, but on the bigger projects, really difficult. And if you're out sort of 10-20% on £1 million, these are big sums of money. You can't be
Sure.
out 10-20%. And a lot of people, understandably, who are new to this, just getting in, trying to get the first property, the second, even the third or fourth property. There are so many variables, and it's really difficult to cost projects. And I find that this is one of the most challenging things that sort of investors with less experience find. Is this something that people like yourselves actually help with? So when you're producing, putting this contract together and sort of pulling all the parts, are you helping your clients actually cost the projects and sort of basically work out what that contract should ultimately be for in terms of monetary value?
Yeah, definitely. And that all comes as part of the pre-contract work. And don't get me wrong, I'll caveat this with, I tell everybody I work with, and that is like I do a lot of mentoring with in the property world, like as well as running my business. I'm also a property investor, and I love talking to property investors about how to do it right. I think there's a massive gap there where people just don't know how to do it right. So I love trying to fill that gap. And I tell people all the time is that stick to what you're good at. So you're an investor. You're good at finding deals. You're good at relationships. You're good at the finances. You're good at raising finance. You're good at all that stuff, right? Leave the builders build. Leave the builders price, and leave the project managers project manage, leave the architects design, right? And just stay in your lane when it comes to your skill set. And that's not to say don't learn other things, but don't fully take it on. And I relate that back to the pricing because I won't go out and price a job because I'm not a builder. I don't know. I'll stay in my lane. But what I will do is I'll use my skills in order to make sure that we've got the best price for the client. And what I mean by that is, and this also links back into sort of not telling a builder how to build. Like you see people all the time, and I just ignore it now. I used to comment on all the things. I see less experienced people on Instagram and things like that saying, I tell my builders to put a hardy backer board on this wall and to put this on this wall. And I think, how do you know? What do you know? What do you know? You're not a plasterboarder. That project, just because you did that on project A, it doesn't mean that it works on project B. And what you need to do, and this is what we do in helping people with pricing, is we will provide a employer's requirements document. We will not produce a detailed spec of build like this, build like this, build like this. Because if that goes wrong, the builder's just going to go, we just did what you're saying, They've got no onus, they've got no responsibility on the project because you've told them everything to do. So what we tend to do is we produce a employer's requirements document, and that is everything that you want the project to look like. Architects design it, they'll design a specification document, and it'll be, what kind of flooring you want, what kind of, this, that, and the other. And then we will send that out to tender, and we will get everybody to send us how they propose to build that project to reach your outcomes. When they've done that, when they've produced that, they also need to produce a breakdown. So we're going to dot and dab this wall because you need to level it out. We're going to skim this wall because you don't need dot and dab. It's quite good. They'll send us all of that with prices next to everything, and we'll just scrutinize it. So we'll make sure that everybody is priced right. And I'll say to builder A, how come your 100 meters squared of plasterboard is 12 grand, and every other builder that we've got in the tender, and we've got 3 other builders in the tender, never go above 5 because then it's no longer competitive tender, say 3 or 4 builders up to 5 in the tender, you say all the other builders in the tender list have come back and that's going to cost, say you're 10 grand or whatever, they're all costing 6 grand. So how are you so inflated on that? And then that we'll pose these questions to them. How are you so much more expensive on just this one line item? Maybe you can go back and have a look at it because we think that maybe you've over-egged that because it's not in line with what we are seeing in the market. Do that to everything. Scrutinize everything on the prices. Measure A against B against C against D. Get all the tender prices in front of you. Now, if you've got everything broken down, then you've got the ability to scrutinize those prices, and then you've got the best price possible by almost taking the best out of everything and putting them into one.
So can we walk through an example? Because this is so interesting to me. Because looking back at how many projects I have struggled with and kind of in the end got there, but probably not the quickest or cheapest. And I think for so many people, this could be quite revolutionary. And I almost wanted to use the word concept, but I don't think that's right because this is clearly the right way to do it. We've all been doing it the wrong way.
Yeah.
So let me walk through an example. I've got a project in, and it's a 1,200 square foot property, and I want to convert it into a 6-bed HMO. I've got a garage to convert. I've got a variety of cosmetic stuff to do, a few walls, a couple of structural bits and pieces. And I probably know that the project's going to cost me about 100,000 quid. So if I come and speak to you, how would you go about sort of handling this for us? Is the first part helping us sort of prepare a contract or a tender to get it out there? Talk us through the actual process that we would go through.
Get a tender put together. So we'll
Build a tender.
Yeah, so we'll put a tender pack together, and that'll include all the drawings, all of the. We'll sit down and say to you, look, let's go through everything, and before we go to tender, we want to minimise the amount of time that we have to spend talking to 5 builders, answering the same questions as everybody. So I'd rather have that conversation once, and I'll just confirm it with you. So get your little Pinterest board or whatever it may be, whatever you want. What kind of flooring do you like? What kind of spec do you want? What sort of paint do you like? Let's go through an employer's requirements document. How do you want this project to look? What are your outcomes?
And that's our tender document then. And then we put that out to these builders, sort of we can find locally, and we sort of basically field, what we can. And then you will scrutinise, like you said, what you get back and basically try and work them down to the best and perhaps most fairest price that gives us a position where we can then make a decision from. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just that we put in the tender pack. The tender pack is massive. And it's what we tend to do is, because I want all tenders to come back to me in the same format, so I'm not then spending a day trying to copy this into this, and we'll send template of your schedule of works, template of your price, put your price into this. And there are going to be builders that are going to say no, right? This is what a lot of people need to wrap their heads around. There are builders out there, and I would say it, if you've been doing it in a way that's maybe a little bit less on the professional side of things for the last 5 years or whatever it may be, the builders that you currently use will likely say no. And I've come to recognize this in my own portfolio, that just say goodbye to them. If they're not willing to level up with you, because that's what you're doing. If you're going to start running projects correctly, you're leveling up, you're getting better, and you're becoming more professional. Your business is more sustainable, it's more scalable, it's better, everything about it is better. You'll have a better product, better delivery. You'll be able to do multiple projects at once because you've now got the availability to go do what you do as an investor, find deals, find finance, because this project's being dealt with. So you're leveling up, you need your builders to level up too. And when you produce a tender pack, and like I said, I put that tender pack together and I put all the templates in there, price your project as of this. A lot of builders will come back and say, no, we don't do that. And I'll say, okay, cool. Well, this is how we do it. So if you want to join our preferred supply list, please let me know when you come to your senses. And then when you do, maybe we'll consider you for the huge amount of projects we got behind us. But if you want the projects, you're going to need to do it our way. So people need to get their heads around it. It is difficult in the beginning to start doing it properly because a lot of you're going to alienate yourself from a lot of the builders you currently use. But when you get to that stage where you're like, oh my God, I've got a bunch of builders that do it this way, your business is just going to go boom, straight up. So yeah, we'll produce all of that stuff in the tender pack. We'll then send it out to we aim for about 10 builders. We send it out to about 10. At the moment, we've got a good preferred supply list of builders all around the UK. And we'll send it out to about 10 builders because you'll usually only get about 5 that come back and say we're good to go on that project. A lot of people are maybe busy or doing other things. So we'll send it out to about 10. We'll get about 5 responses, maybe a little bit more. But then that usually translates to about 3 to 5 people who are actively tendering for the project. And yeah, we'll then sit there, and some prices are going to be like that. Some prices are going to be like that. We want to bring them in line. And the only way to do that is each line item that's more expensive than the other three. Why? I'm going to question you on that point. These guys, you're seriously cheap on your dry lining. How? Because it's not just like, if something is too cheap, they may have made a mistake on that. And you can sit there and say, I'll take that. I'll take that all day. Good luck when you get to that point where they've run out of money, because they will walk away from your project. You would much rather their project be beneficial to them. So I'll also question them and say, this is a lot lower than everybody else's. How do you do that? And maybe they'll come back and say, we've got employees that do our dry lining, we don't subcontract. Cool. Brilliant.
I guess that takes us nicely onto variations as well. Not uncommon on projects.
Yeah.
See it all the time. But one of the things that I know a lot of people find very, very difficult, all of a sudden the prices for variations or additional bits are coming in and they look substantially out of kilter with the rest of the original contract. Oh, all of a sudden it's like, plastering a wall is costing like 800 quid, and it's like, hang on, how does this make sense? Is this, again, the sort of thing that people like you, Dean, will help and manage and monitor and I suppose prevent builders taking the piss? Because it's certainly my experience, it is one of the areas that often builders do seem to try and claw back or actually make a lot of their margin because they know that there's going to be stuff that we haven't thought about or stuff that comes up, hammer us with the extras, and that's where they can create a big fat margin. And is this the sort of thing that you help and manage people with as well?
That is everything that we're talking about is the difference between somebody who's on site every day, the builder project managing the project, and an actual project manager managing the project, because all of that stuff is project management. That is project management and quantity surveying. Project management and quantity surveying are very similar. They are when you get to certain levels. And yeah, you're exactly right. If you've got a builder that's just said, walked in and gone, I'll get this done for you for 100 grand, mate. Yeah, cool. Right. So you're going to get it done for 100 grand. Can you break down your costs? We don't do breakdowns. All right. Well, John in the pub said you're pretty good. So yeah, get to it. When they come back to you and say, we need to dry line an extra wall, that's going to be 5 grand. And you're like, what? You've got absolutely no ability to question that. But what we tend to do, and the builders know this, builders who do things in the professional way, and we find easy to work with because they know exactly how professional construction works, we'll almost tell them how much it's going to cost, and we'll just get confirmation from them. Say like, well, we need to, Dean, a wall has fallen down. We need to strip out 60 square meters of wall and rebuild it. Right. Okay. We're looking at your price. It seems that the crux of your price is based around X amount per square meter. When I'm looking at all the other line items, so that's probably going to be around 2 grand, right? And they'll be like, yeah, that's about right. Right, cool. Add your profits and overhead onto it, obviously, and then get to it. So you're able to see that they are not taking the piss, because a lot of people do that.
It all seems very simple as you explain it like this, Dean, and it makes so much sense. Why you would bring somebody like yourself on to help manage projects like this, yet so many of us for so long haven't done it and probably ended up spending far, far, far more because we thought we were actually saving money on day one. Just very quickly, Dean, the paperwork then. JCT contracts, are there other types of paperwork out there? And what size projects? Is it any size? Is it over a certain threshold? At what point should we be using these sorts of contracts with our builders?
I used recently a JCT contract, getting my office repainted and cupboards put in. It cost 5 grand. I used the JCT Minor Works contract. There's absolutely no way that anybody's coming anywhere near my home, my project, anything to do with any work being done with a hammer in their hand without something to say that if they take the piss, they're going down.
So the short answer is, on anything you can put the right
anything.
paperwork, and you should put the right paperwork in place.
There's different contracts. There'll be people watching this who've got a lot of experience in contracts, and I'm sure they'll kind of think, well, I don't use JCT, I use NEC. There's a different form of contract called NEC, and that, it's a little bit more difficult, I think, personally. And just stick with JCT. Everybody sticks with JCT. NEC is more for like framework stuff, doing big roads or whatever. If you've got a project, The thing is with JCT is that you can, so there's a JCT minor works contract, intermediate contract, and standard contract. All variations in between. Like if you want the builder to design the project, then it's a design and build contract, whatever. But a JCT minor works contract will cover you up to $1 million, no dramas whatsoever, up to 2.5 million. It's not so much on the total spend of the project, it's how complex it is. So JCT minor works will cover you on conversions and things like that. But yeah, I'll use a JCT contract for absolutely everything, regardless of whether it's big or not. It just protects you, but it also protects the builder. It makes the builder know that actually this guy's professional. Because if I decide not to pay that builder's also got a contract against me too. It just creates a level playing field.
And it makes so much sense when you talk about it like this, Dean. And again, sat here thinking, how did we miss this for so long? How did we sort of think that there was a better way, or the alternative way was better and cheaper and easier, when very clearly actually that's not the case. So look, for anyone sat here listening today, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people thinking, oh shit, yeah, I've been I've been doing it wrong, and we need to change this. We need to get it right. Perhaps you can tell us about a couple of things quickly. The Refurb Academy and QS Force, which I know is your property management business. If people out there want to learn more about this, or actually just come to you and say, Dean, look, could you help me with a project? Where do they need to go?
So the two separate things, like you just mentioned, QS Force is my quantity surveying and project management business. We do everything that we've just spoke about. That is, you can message me direct. So on Instagram, it's Dean the Property PM. And we don't have a company Instagram. I just, as the owner of the company, just run the social media myself. So send me a message on there, or you can go to qsforce.co.uk, and everything that we do, how to get in touch with us, is on that. Or like I said, just ping me a message on Instagram. If you've got something that you would rather do yourself, and I do recognize that some people are working on tight budgets, and they do want to be able to, a lot of people as well, it's nothing to do with budget. They just want to learn how to do it. So I'll have a lot of people calling me up and say, look, I want to do one project with you, but can you CC me into absolutely everything? And can you just tell me everything you're doing, because I want to be able to do it myself? Then that's awesome. A lot of people learn how to do this. It's fine, because they're doing minor projects and they're doing things that they can manage it from a perspective that what we just spoke about. So for people who want to do that, and people who want to learn a little bit more about project management and what we do and how we do it, I set up a Refurb Academy, which again runs from the same Instagram account, at Dean the Property PM. And what the Refurb Academy is basically an online learning of a load of modules, and we just go in depth of everything we just spoke about, how we do things from start to finish, from a phone call coming in saying I've got a project, right through to the project being complete, with all the templates, all of that sort of stuff. So if people want to do that themselves and learn how to do it a little bit more, then message me on Instagram at Dean the Property PM.
It sounds like similar to the roadmap in a sense, really kind of deep dive into a really specific topic. And I can only imagine that we've probably just scraped the surface today, but you've definitely got my attention. I'm sure the attention of a lot of our listeners today. So it sounds like a great resource to go and just find out a bit more about how to do this properly. Dean, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure. It's made me think very differently about a lot of what we do, and it's made me sort of look back at what we've done for so long and kind of recognize why on so many occasions it didn't quite go to plan. So thank you for coming on today and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom and making us see that there is a better way to do it.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure.